Good afternoon to all of our friends on the East Coast, and good morning to our friends on the West Coast. Welcome to today's webinar, Enhancing Client Relationships with Asset-Map and Wealthbox. We're going to get things started here in just a minute. Briefly did want to remind everyone of two things. Number one, we will be recording today's webinar, and you will get a copy of the recording. Also did want to remind everyone that's joining us that we do have a Q&A section available. If you have any questions during today's webinar, feel free to put those in, and we'll get to those on the back end of today's call. With that, we'll give everyone another 20 seconds or so to make their way in, and then we'll get things kicked off. Again, thank you everyone for joining us for today's webinar on enhancing client relationships with Asset-Map in Wealthbox. I'm Andrew Ladwig, Director of Business Development here at Wealthbox. I work with our integration partners, our broker-dealer partners, as well as our custodial partners. Today, I am really excited to be joined by our friend Allison Susko from Asset-Map. Allison, we'd love to get a little bit of background on you before we get things kicked off today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's always a pleasure to do the 2 or 3 webinars a year that we get to host together, Andrew, and our two companies are a great fit. So it's always exciting to join up with you all to host a great session, and especially focusing on, kind of prospecting and converting leads, one of my favorite topics, and really doing it all efficiently. So thrilled to be here. As Andrew said, I'm Allison Susko, VP of Community over at Asset-Map. I am working on, maybe year 7 at Asset-Map, which is really exciting. And I have been in the industry for a long time, about 15 years. And like Andrew, I work with a lot of our affinity partners, so a lot of our broker-dealer friends, our joint integration partners, and kind of all things relationship management at Asset-Map. So great to be here with you all. And if you have any questions, like Andrew said, we're happy to take them. And yeah, I'm ready to rock when you are, Andrew.
Fantastic. We'll kick things off with kind of an open discussion to get today's conversation going. And then we'll also be diving into Wealthbox and Asset-Map, as well as the workflows that we have available. With that, Allison, I wanted to kick today's discussion off just going into what goes into client onboarding and why is it so important for advisors to fine tune that. I know even in my time, almost 15 years in the industry, onboarding a new client has taken on a completely new shape and form. What is that looking like today for advisors out there?
Yeah, I agree with you. There's been so many changes. I like to, from time to time, I'll pop up the difference between, the Kitsis map, 10 years ago versus now, and all the technology options that advisors have. And, as you're adding on, with your kind of core technology, I always think of your core technology as your CRMs, your portfolio management, your financial planning. You're adding on these specialty softwares. A lot of times they consider Asset-Map to be a specialty software, although we fall into the financial planning category. And now that you have, instead of maybe 2 or 3 techs that people were using 10 years ago, you might have 5, 6, 7. I talked to, a lot of folks that have 2 or 3 financial planning tools alone. And, the bottom line to that all is, yeah, it's great to have all these options to serve my clients and exactly what they need and my niche and everything that's so important. But does that mean I have to put data into 8 platforms instead of just 2 or 3? Obviously, we all know it's time consuming. And I think having a strategy to, what you're using, making sure that flow is right, going from your CRM to your planning to your portfolio management, what's the right tech stack for you? But in addition to that, what's the right workflow? Not to use a pun for what we're talking about today, but what is the right kind of order of operations for your tech? And how can you really streamline getting that onboarding and that fact finding done, because it can be daunting if you don't think through it. And to not leave that open ended, always remember to talk to the firms that you're subscribing with to see what they recommend, because like Andrew said, he's been around for 15 years, so have I. We have a lot of insight that we can share with our advisor friends on the most effective way to do some great fact finding, make it client friendly, and also save you time, which allows you to do what's most important to you, which is work with your clients. So it's definitely complex at times, but you've got a lot of experts out there that you can reach out to help you navigate, how to do this in a great way. And I hope we can do that for you today as well.
And on that note, as you think about kind of the progression of financial advisors and that onboarding process, we hear a lot now about, building wallet share, building a true holistic relationship, right? And so onboarding now looks a lot different than even 5, 10 years ago. What are some of those pain points that you're hearing and seeing during that onboarding process?
Yeah, a couple things that really stand out to me are we hear a lot from advisors because Asset Map, as if you're new to it, it's very visual, and you'll see that today. It's great for interaction during a meeting. So we talk a lot about the value of the meeting, getting off to a good start with a client, even in the beginning, maybe before they're even an official client and they're a prospect. And what we hear a lot regarding that and that kind of new relationship that you're building with your clients or prospects is I feel like I'm asking for too much if I say, hey, bring in your shoebox of statements. That seems a little intrusive in the beginning of a relationship, or maybe not even intrusive, but nobody enjoys that, right? Like, asking for that grouping of statements that might just be a little too much for that first meeting. But you also want to make sure you're kicking off that relationship with value from the start. So you also don't want to get to like meeting 3 or 4 without understanding if you really know a lot about them. So I talk a lot about that a lot. Hey, can we make this first meeting super valuable? Make sure it's a great fit between us and the prospect, in the firm and the prospect. And also, how can we do that effectively and find out more about that person, but also have it kind of contribute to the fact finding I want to do? So I talk about that a ton. And that would be two challenges I would say I hear a lot are I don't want to ask for statements. There's got to be a better way. I certainly don't want to get into usernames and passwords in a first meeting. And also, how can I really make sure that client knows that I've done some due diligence and we're kicking off that first meeting really valuably and making sure it's a good fit. That's kind of the two things I hear a lot.
Absolutely. One of the other things that comes up all the time as we think about onboarding and it comes up with firms is oftentimes the actual process that goes into it, right? And for most firms nowadays, I always like to say that every firm has workflows. They just
Mhm.
may not live in their CRM today, right? They've got a team member that's been doing this for years. The advisor knows the process that to open up a new account. But in many cases, they may not actually have those processes built out today. Are
Yeah.
there a couple specific workflows that you're hearing, seeing processes that you're seeing being used for that from that end?
Yeah, I mean, definitely, honestly, yours. I hear about that a lot, being able to customize, as much as we want to make things seamless and we want to scale and we want to make sure that everybody is working efficiently in the office. No two offices look the same. So there's also that kind of conundrum between, even the workflow we're going to show you in a few minutes that we build into Wealthbox. This is great. You've given me 8 really good starting points, but I just do it a little bit different. Can I tweak this or that? So I think it's that conundrum between make it seamless, make it standard, but also give me the ability to tweak if necessary because my process looks just a little bit different than the guy down the street. And that then, resonates with the clients, I feel like as well, just making things really kind of fit your firm. But that's, kind of what I think. And also just leveraging technology to support what you need when it comes to onboarding and workflows, but not letting it take over your life either. That kind of happy medium.
It's interesting seeing firms that build out and kind of crystallize these best practices, right? I mean, you talk to so many firms out there that want to grow, they want to add advisors, perhaps they've got a next generation, and they're looking to crystallize their best practices. And oftentimes,
100%.
what you find is that what is the connecting thread between your clientele, right? Perhaps it's workers at a specific company or with a specific background, in crystallizing those best practices. To your point, you can't do it 100% of the time. Every relationship works a little bit differently.
Yep.
But let's start digging in. Would love to
Yeah.
get a little bit of background as to how Asset Map works with firms during this process.
Yeah. So we're going to I'm going to share my screen here in a second. So, Andrew, if you could shout out if everything looks okay in here in a second. And let me go ahead and start my slideshow.
We're good to go. I see it.
Okay, excellent. So, as Andrew mentioned, today we're really talking a lot about onboarding, about prospecting, about converting leads. So clearly, there's a lot more to Asset Map than just data entry, fact finding. But I'm really going to stick to those basics today, and I'll give you some additional insight into what we do otherwise if you're new to Asset Map. But that being said, always remember our team is thrilled to talk to you, and we'll tell you how to connect with us if you need some additional detail on the other things we do. But what's kind of rolling here in the background while I talk to you is it's showing you the client experience. And when I mean the client experience, we have two different ways that end clients or prospects can interact with AssetMap. And the first one is going to be our discovery process. Our discovery process is that quick, easy fact finding that I was talking about a few minutes ago. Find out more about someone before they even show up to the meeting, before you implement the workflow with Asset-Map and Wealthbox, and maybe before you even implement the actual integration we have with the Wealthbox. So there's lots of ways our two companies work together, but I wanted to give you some context into getting that information, getting to the point where you can have that valuable meeting with your client right from the start. And you're going to kind of think about it from a client perspective here in a minute. So over on the right is actually that asset map report that I would say we're probably known for more than anything else. That's what you see if you see us out in the industry or if you see us on social media. That's that report that's going to give you a full oversight of that household and their financial picture. And that's created in a multitude of ways through the client discovery process that I'm going to show you in a minute, through integrations like what we have with Wealthbox and many other partners, and also just through that meeting interaction that you have with your clients. So if Andrew was my client, maybe the last step to get this asset map on the right-hand side in a place that we want it after we've done the fact finder, after we've done the integrations is, hey, Andrew, does this look right to you? Yeah, it's pretty close, but I forgot to tell you in our last meeting, I've since gotten a raise. Oh, okay, let's update our income real quick. So there's lots of ways to make sure it's accurate. And what clients are going to do is they're going to see this asset map and think, well, like I just said, you're right on track, but you're missing these couple of items. Maybe there's that Schwab account they've had for 10 years and you didn't even know about it. What ends up happening is they see the report, they want to make it accurate, and you're able to uncover opportunities for yourself while also doing what's best for the client now that you know their full picture. So it's almost like a fun experiment of human nature sometimes using Asset Map. It's very, very fun how your clients react to it. But if you were to even take out your phone right now and take a picture of that QR code on the left-hand side, it would give you that experience that the client or prospect actually has when they get the link from you that says, hey, Andrew, can't wait to meet with you next week. Tell me a little bit more about yourself before you get here. Once we send that link out to folks, it takes about 12 minutes for them to fill it out. It's super, super client friendly. You can see on the screen there, it says, welcome, Kate and Stephen. It's going to walk them through almost like in a TurboTax experience. You know what I mean? When it takes you to the next step and it says, hey, great job. Let's move to the next section. It's very, very easy for clients and prospects to use. And it'll also capture any and everything they feel comfortable giving you. If they leave something out, it's okay. It's not going to tell them they missed a step or anything like that. 48% of people that we send this out to, and that includes cold sends. Cold send, what would that mean? Maybe you had a client event. Maybe you did a prospecting event at a local restaurant where you did some training on retirement planning. 48% of people who are getting that link from you that say, hey, great meeting you at my client event last week. I'd love to work with you in a larger capacity. Send me, fill this out. Let me know more about yourself and we'll see if a meeting makes sense. So when you're sending that out, we're getting almost 50% of those back. And it's giving you insight into folks that you might want to work with and who might really want to be working with you. And 36 billion, once you get into the billions with me, I start losing context, but $36 billion in household finances have been collected using our prospecting tool called Discovery. So it's definitely making an impact. A couple other things before I jump into the system and show you around the workflow, but just keeping this prospecting in mind is, and you're going to get what we work on in the workflow is actually going to reference Discovery. So now you'll have an idea of what it's doing for you. This gentleman here, Eric, he actually has boosted his conversion rate of up to 40% using the direct to client fact finder. And how that's working for him is he does a lot of prospecting. Obviously, that's a core part of his business. He also sends the link out in his Calendly invite. So here's an idea for you. You're about to meet with a client in 10 days, let's say. You want them to go ahead and fill out the Asset Map Discovery Platform link. That will pre-fill that Asset Map view for you and give you insight into what to talk about in that first meeting. If they don't fill out the link in his Calendly invite, he kind of at that point feels like, well, maybe we're not on the same page. Maybe they're not committed to working with me as an advisor. And he really kind of makes that part of his process. And he won't have that meeting until they give their team some insight into what they have going on. So again, this is really a way to get this pre-populated. What's flowing out here in the background is, Asset Map. Before we jump into the platform, we have some great additional features. Again, we're considered a financial planning tool, so you could do your needs analysis planning in here. We have fantastic integrations. You can put what-if scenarios into the Asset Map report and really do some great planning for your clients once you have the information filled out. Just going to give you a bit more context and then we're going to jump into the workflow. So I'm hopping over into the Asset Map system now. And I just want to show you, like I said, there's really 3 ways to get information in here. Number 1, integrations. Number 2, discovery, direct to client fact finder link that we've been talking about. And then manually. We don't want manual to scare anyone. Manual is not like filling out an entire 80-page fact finder like you might have in other financial planning tools. Manually means that interaction between myself and the client or prospect. So it's very easy to pop up a field and just change 2 items in it. We keep it really simple. But I just wanted to give you an idea of what the Wealthbox integration does, because I would be remiss if I didn't. It's a great integration. We absolutely loved working with the Wealthbox team. So let me go ahead and do household and integrations. And you can see I have a few loaded up in here. We've got a nitrogen integration, really cool new Holistiplan integration that actually partners very nicely with Wealthbox, which is great. What Wealthbox integration is going to do, and I would call this step 1 of our kind of dual relationship when it comes to data sharing and working together in a joint capacity, is the integration. And that's going to bring over contact information. Let's say I have a household of client, spouse, 4 kids. Do I know off the top of my head all 4 kids' dates of birth? Do I probably even know the spouse's date of birth, their address, their email address? Probably not. We don't expect everyone to know that for all of their clients. So what's great about the Wealthbox integration is we always say the CRM has the best data, the gold standard of data, the best contact information for the client. We never claim to be that over at Asset-Map. We would rather partner with great companies like Wealthbox to say, you know the latest and greatest about this couple, you know where they live in the CRM, you know that they had a baby 6 months ago that might not be an Asset-Map yet. And if you go ahead and you either import, that means you're going to pull it in for the first time, or if you view, that means they're already in there. Importings allow you to say, let's get these folks in here, let's add the kids, and they're all going to be listed up at the top of the Asset Map report, allowing you to go in and start working with them even more closely. So it's very simple. Type in your username and password to Wealthbox. I just did it today. And that opens up that pipeline for you to be able to pull in anybody you have that lives in Wealthbox into Asset Map, make sure all of their pertinent data is up to date, and you can go on and start using workflows. You can load in other integrations that might be pulling in investments, and you're off and running. So we're very thankful for the Wealthbox integration. It's a great stepping stone to get started with that client. Now, Andrew, I'm going to pivot over from Asset Map to Wealthbox, and I'm going to head into the workflow area, and I am going to make sure I don't mess this up, but you can tell me if I don't. I think I know how to get there.
You've got it in exactly the right place. And perhaps just a minute of background here.
Yeah.
2 summers ago, our team worked really, really closely with some of our clients who were heavy workflow users. And what we actually built out and what Allison has in that drop-down menu is we built out a Wealthbox workflow library. So just 2 spots above Asset Map there, we have 10 pre-built workflows for firms that are looking to get started, right? Getting that first step. They like the idea of workflows, but they may not know where to get started. All of these 10 can then be taken, customized, duplicated. You can create your own, but this gives you that first step to really start bringing workflows into your practice. And again, building out, crystallizing those best practices. Now, what we did and built out last year with many of our partners, including Asset-Map, was workflow libraries that included many of our close integration partners. So, what Allison's about to pull up here is available to Wealthbox users along with the Wealthbox workflow library. With that, Allison, I will pass it back over to you to start diving into the Asset-Map workflow.
That's great. I was so impressed when I heard about this when Andrew and the team reached out to me a couple years ago and said, "Hey, we'd love to add in a AssetMap specific workflow." We at AssetMap love what I kind of call almost a non-API, a non-data building integration. So this is just as valuable, in my opinion, as a lot of the API integrations that take our dev and product teams a ton of time to build. This was me going in and building it. I am no product person. I am no developer. And it was so easy. So that tells you two things. I think that all of these companies, so when I talk about you have all these great technologies at your disposal, I bet you a lot of folks on this call right now are using a couple of these companies that you've partnered with, Andrew, and are able to, really jump in and whether it's the asset map workflow or the Holistiplan workflow, really make this worthwhile. And they are just as valuable as, sending data back and forth and things like that, because they really are saving you time and allowing you to use that, great process of a workflow within two platforms, in this case, AssetMap and Wealthbox. So we absolutely love it. I had fun building this. Don't let it scare you off if you want to come in and build one of your own or tweak one of ours, because it really was a great experience. And I want to get maybe another one built at some point as well. So Andrew, am I doing this right? I think I am.
Yep.
Okay, great. So the purpose of this workflow is to help us out with the onboarding and advice delivery. And there's a lot of cool things that I've added into this, and I'm sure a lot of the other partners have added in to support the conversation, to support what you're doing. Even if you're new to AssetMap, maybe you decide to sign up and you say, "Hey, I remember they have a Wealthbox workflow." It even has some great marketing materials built in to give you more insight into the different pieces of the workflow that we built. So descriptions, marketing materials, maybe even some things you could share with a client to give them more context into what they're about to experience. So the idea is to keep you on track, to make sure that you're ready for this kind of client meeting that we have down on maybe step number 8, because we want to know, hey, did they fill out that discovery link? Have I reviewed it? Has my staff reviewed it? And that's what this workflow is going to do for us. So what's the first step? First step is send that discovery link and custom video to your client or prospect. Again, use case is almost like that case study I shared quickly that was Eric, in this case, sends out the discovery link in his Calendly invite for that meeting request where they are able to pick a time. And you're in your brain thinking, okay, I would love to get that discovery link out to the client, give them a couple days to meet up with their spouse, fill it out together, and also give me time for me and my staff to review what they're telling me they have going on in their financial life. Really cool stuff. So description is easy. I'm not going to read these all to you, but to give you an idea, prior to the meeting, you would like to find out more about their financial situation by filling out the Asset Map Discovery Questionnaire. This is going to create the initial report for you to review and actually do some of that data entry for you on the map, which is great. And a nice little marketing sheet to keep you informed about what that means. So we are setting a due date for this, and Andrew, correct me if I'm wrong. That will then give you a reminder to say this is not done, or it's not complete, or do we need to kind of start over? Is that correct? It's going to keep us
Yeah,
on task.
exactly. So when I log in that week before that meeting, or perhaps I'm a team member doing so, this can help kick off the process with the right timing with that meeting coming up, in this case, in 7 days. But again, making sure that we're hitting on all these steps.
So this is actually really cool too. And when we saw it before, it said, "Hey, let me know if this does it, the due date's in 7 days." This one's a little different. Let's confirm the client completed the fact finder. Now, in the Asset Map system, you're going to get an alert that says Andrew Ladwig filled out his discovery questionnaire. You can click right on it in Asset Map and read all about Andrew and what he decided to tell you about leading up to your meeting, which is phenomenal. But if you're not sure, you didn't log into AssetMap, you can also, of course, set up a reminder here in Wealthbox workflow that's going to say, okay, yeah, client's all good, step is completed, or do we need to jump back and send that link again and remind them? Is that correct, Andrew? So we can kind of go in a couple different directions here, depending on what the outcome was.
Exactly.
Okay, great. Follow up with client on completing the fact finder. So again, depending on that outcome, did they do it? Did they not? The workflow is going to move to the next step and let you know, is this a situation where you need to send a gentle reminder about them filling that out for you? Or can you just go ahead and go to step 4 in this case and review the asset map report that Discovery created? So let's assume they did their job, they did their homework, and you're super excited to go in and see what they filled out. You can then skip to step 4, and it says, in this case, when you receive the notification that your client or prospect has completed their interview, go into the household and asset map, have some, you'll have context into what they talk about. Maybe in this case, it's a prospect that has become a client already, and you want to connect Wealthbox in. So setting up the workflow, doing the discovery process in Asset-Map does not preclude you from pulling in, again, that contact information from the client, address, email address, phone numbers, children's names, children's birthdays, get them all loaded up, because I will tell you something. When they see the Asset-Map report with all those great assets, individually held, jointly held, insurance policies, and then they see their kids' names up at the top, that's going to inspire them to talk to you about things like, hey, that's my beneficiary for these accounts, or this is the executor of my will. Let's make sure we get them included in the meeting. The great thing about having appropriate family members and CRM data and asset map is it's going to inspire you to have those conversations with your clients about, you've got a complex family situation. Let's talk about exactly who belongs to who. Do you have kids from previous marriages? What's the situation with this family, so we can best serve you? And it also might get you those introductions you might like to future generations to work with them as well. So making sure the asset map report is set up how you like is very, very valuable from a relationship perspective. And we're going to lean on Wealthbox to give us some of that information.
Yep.
We have some additional cool features in Asset Map that are going to help you fact find. So let's say client filled out the discovery link, you've loaded up Wealthbox, you have all that appropriate CRM data in there. I can also even put in some templates in the Asset Map system that we call stencils to say, okay, now we've got context from the client, we've got CRM context loaded into Asset Map. But you know what? I work with a lot of business owners, and they tend to have a lot of the same things. We have what's called stencils in Asset Map that will actually overlay a template for you of items that a lot of business owners tend to have, or a lot of executives with stock options tend to have. Whatever kind of niche you have, you can also build some, custom made templates in Asset Map to say, let's throw those boxes on there so I don't have to recreate the wheel by putting those placeholders in. Really great way to lead that meeting in that interactive part to say, a lot of folks like you tend to have things like this. Let's get those placeholders on the asset map for you and make that facilitate the meeting even better than we could have before. So we've done a lot of work now, right? We're getting ready for this client meeting. We have the stencil loaded up. We've got everything from Wealthbox ready to go. Confirm that client meeting. Things change, right? Your time is very valuable. Your client's time is very valuable. I always recommend, sending out a nice little reminder, make sure the meeting is happening, the time works for them. And now that you're all set, you can move on to the next step of the workflow, which is the client meeting. Great time to talk about everything you've uncovered. Great time to talk about maybe how frequently you're going to meet. Are you actually going to become that person's advisor? Is it a great fit for both of you? All of those things can be kind of done throughout this process. And, what's the right cadence moving forward? Do you want to meet once a year? Do you want to meet every 6 months? Talk about that. And you can then kind of continue on with this workflow to say, gosh, now every 6 months, let's make sure that everything's updated on my asset map before we meet. You could set that up in the workflow as well. Maybe take it to another level and say, yes, this person is becoming my client. It's a great fit. We really hit it off on that first meeting. I had great context about them before we even met. Let's make sure that this is an every 6 month thing, or whatever makes sense to you and your client. And that can all be set up as reminders right here within Wealthbox to kind of keep things moving. Andrew, what did I miss from a workflow perspective here?
You know what? I think you hit on most of the main points. The thing that you touched on at the end that I think is really important is, what does that cadence look like moving forward, right? And
Mhm.
how do we continue that? And what we've seen some firms do is take actually this asset map workflow, go in and duplicate it, make it their own, and also help model their review meetings that also do
Mm,
include asset map in building that out. So, I always think about the example of utilizing a whiteboard and actually mapping this out. Again, most firms are going to have a review meeting cadence. They probably have some agenda items, but actually mapping out what that looks like in the future. So I would say that's something that can definitely be taken away from this. But again, this allows you to crystallize those best practices in exactly what you will do before that first and second meeting. The second thing I'd really touch on there that comes up quite a bit
yeah.
is between that first and second meeting, right? That
Yep.
get to know you meeting, and then it may be an implementation meeting, it may be a secondary meeting. But what goes into that? You talked a little bit about the stencil capability there. We did have a question come in, and before we
Sure.
go into Q&A, just want to bring up one question, but we'll dive into Q&A here in a moment.
Yeah.
How can that stencil be used? You talked about that business owner idea, but can you open up on that a little bit further, that idea of using the stencil?
Absolutely. It's a really great feature within Asset Map, and it's one of my favorites. And we've recently created a library similar to the Wealthbox workflow library, where we have the ability to, of course, we've built some custom ones for you. When I say custom, I mean custom to Asset Map, which then you can, again, tweak just like you can with Wealthbox. You can create your own stencils. So again, if you work with one of the ones we've heard a couple times is folks that work with Delta employees in Atlanta area, I believe, and air traffic controllers. We have a few people who have built air traffic controller stencils and asset maps, so they must work with a lot of Delta folks. And they have come in and said those types of people tend to have these for investments, whatever it is. And they're able to come in and say, let's apply a stencil. So I popped up an asset map household that is pretty nicely built out. But if I apply a stencil, I can come in and say, so there's my stencils. That's what kind of lives in your office. If you have a firm of 5 different advisors and 3 staff members, you could have your own custom stencils just for your firm, shared across users right here in my stencils. But the public library is going to include ones that we think are pretty valuable to a lot of general public, the advisors. Um, so I tend to use, what ones do I like to use? Building blocks is good. It's just like very basic. It will build out a lot of what you see behind me, or behind the stencils integration. Retired folks, military, police officers, a Canadian stencil. That might be our most popular stencil. We have a lot of Canadian advisors, and they say, "Hey, can you make this look a little bit less United States? Can you use some of our terminology? Like they don't call things 401ks. I think they call them RSPs or something like that." And so we kind of tweaked it a bit to make this really appropriate for our Canadian friends that buy SMA. UK, firefighters, philanthropy. As you can see, we have a lot pre-built. We work with some other partners like FP Pathfinder and Visuwealth that will actually build out some info for you as well. All that being said, if I add a stencil, so I'll just do the traditional one. Do I want to add this to both client and spouse or just one? You can choose. So I'll say in this case, no, I don't know a whole lot about Paula, so let's apply it for her and apply. So it's going to take a second, and what you're going to see is it's going to put in some placeholders. A stencil is essentially that asset map placeholder for a item that you want to add in. So the one I chose that's kind of just our basic fact finders include things like, do they have a 401k? Do they have an inactive plan? Do they have an IRA or a Roth? So adding things in that just typically a lot of people tend to have, and it's going to build that behind the scenes. So then all you have to do is either come in and say, this isn't applicable, delete. They already have it, maybe. Or I can come in and say, let's pop up this long term care and I'll give it some additional information. Why do we put a dollar instead of a zero? We found that putting a zero in with anything that comes to money has a bad connotation. So we put a dollar in instead, and it gets people motivated to change it from a dollar to the actual amount. So that's another little piece of, I guess, um, psychology that we use in the system. But you want to think about the stencils as quick ways to add in fact finder boxes in the asset map report so you can really quickly and easily update and make things as accurate as possible.
Makes perfect sense. With that, we're going to shift over fully into the Q&A side. And it's interesting, Allison, we had a couple questions come in. We talked about that case study earlier
Yeah.
with Eric and how to utilize that
Mhm.
discovery tool. I think most people are familiar with Asset Map, being able to see the map with the
Yeah.
assets and different accounts. But that discovery tool had a couple of general questions in terms
Sure.
of, are there any other best practices that you're seeing firms utilize in terms of introducing that discovery tool or
Mhm.
different ways to leverage it? Anything that you're seeing there?
Yeah. So you can think about discovery in two ways. A discovery link that is all tied either to your firm, if you have multiple users within AssetMap, or just you as the advisor, it's all tied back to you. So if I send a link out to someone, the link is custom to Allison and would always come back to me. Or if you designate someone at your firm, it can come back to someone within the firm. That being said, there's two different types of links. One is direct to someone I want to send it to. I
Yep.
want to send it to Andrew. That means it's custom to Andrew. Or there's a link that is kind of what we call our inbound link. You could put it on your email address and say, hey, looking to work with a financial advisor? Fill out my link here. That would then, instead of going directly to Andrew, when I know I assigned it to Andrew, that could go to anybody. They would then fill out their first name, last name, and email address. That way, you know, oh, this came in from a prospecting effort that I had. Let me give you a really good example. One of my favorite examples is, do you work with 401k plan participants? So my brother-in-law is a 401k planner in Pittsburgh area, and when I started working the asset map and I already knew what he did, I was like, wait a second, you get all of your advisory business from the 401k plan participants at the universities and firms outside of Pittsburgh. Wouldn't it be valuable if you have a participant meeting? We actually just had ours at Asset Map yesterday with our provider. And if he were to send out a link and say, hey, does anybody need support from an advisory perspective? Are you looking for a financial advisor? Tell me a little bit more about yourself. I would be happy to meet with you and have a complimentary meeting. Fill out the discovery link, send it over to him. That gets the relationship up and running. So it can be directly to a client or a prospect and a couple themselves, or you can use it as, a follow up to a seminar after a 401k plan participant meeting in your email signature. We have lots of folks who have it listed right on their website. So there's lots of ways to think about discovery depending on if you're doing some heavy prospecting in your firm or if you're just looking to have the clients give you more insight individually before a meeting. And it's super, super client friendly, guys. You're not going to get into a situation where they're going to be freaked out or it's too much information. It's really, really user friendly and client friendly. So you can think about it in two ways, kind of from that prospecting perspective, or if you're sending it directly to an individual. But lots of great best practices we could share with you, similar to Eric's putting it in the Calendly link or putting it in your email signature. Really, really valuable stuff that can lead to some great efforts on your part to get more information about folks.
Perfect. And with that, as we wrap up, we did get a couple questions in. And Allison, if you want to introduce the best way to get in touch with the Asset Map team, we had a couple questions about diving in further actually on that discovery tool and then
Yeah,
diving in on Asset Map further as well.
yeah, we'd love to. So I'm very proud to say, can I share my screen real quick?
Absolutely.
Just one more time. That way I can give folks a QR code. So hello at assetmap.com, asset-map.com will work. And also you can connect with us right away using this QR code. So that will connect you with our sales team. They're great. So we have plenty of folks to support you if you have questions. And I'm also going to type my email in can they see my chat as well, Andrew, if I type it in?
No, but what's the best email for you for anybody who's joined us?
Allison with one L, Alison dot Susko, Susko, at asset-map.com. So if you have questions about this webinar, if you have questions about discovery, I love talking about it. You can always hit me up. And our team is really great. So we have amazing training team that get you up and running if you're interested. They will onboard you, make sure you know what you're doing. Our sales team's phenomenal. So that link, that QR code will take you right to contacting us. And we're always thrilled to chat with people, just as Wealthbox, I'm sure, is as well. So if you want to stop sharing, and I'll stop sharing and you can share again. That way, if anybody wants to hit either of us up, they can. So QR code would be fine, or hello@asset-map.com would be fine. It looks like sales@wealthbox.com.
Absolutely. Feel free to reach out to our team. We'd love to have a conversation with you. Also, a reminder for any Asset-Map and Wealthbox users, we've got a fantastic integration page that has not only a how-to guide, but we'll also have this video from today's webinar. With that, Allison, as always, we really appreciate the partnership and working with the Asset-Map team. For everyone who joined us, thank you. Have a fantastic rest of the day, and we'll talk to you all soon. Have a great day.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks, Andrew.
See ya.